Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon all of you, my fellow learners, professionals, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the SWOT analysis video of the Pre-see, which is Pixlwizz, the video game development company that has been assigned for the November 2021 and Feb 2022 exam iteration. But before I get on with the SWOT analysis, I have a couple of small but exciting announcements to make. The first being that, as you know, every session I conduct my signature free CIMA SCS writing coaching session. So herewith, I'd like to extend an invitation to anyone and everyone who is planning to take up the CIMA SCS exam. We are hoping to discuss many important elements, as you might have noticed from much of the content I have put on YouTube, extracts from the CIMA SCS writing coaching session. So even this time, there are some tailor-made discussions pertaining to the upcoming exam iteration. The session is going to be held on the 14th of November, Sunday at 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time, or the equivalent time zone of your relevant continent or country. You're most welcome. You can join the session using the link in the description section of wherever you find this video. Furthermore, there's another small announcement. As you know, there's a lot of content that I have, and one of the main platforms that I usually utilize to engage with learners around the world is my website, the official website www.cimascs.com. So it is with humble pleasure I would like to announce that now the exclusive smart prep products, the effective prep products for CIMA SCS called Minimal Prep, Fast Prep and Guided Prep, which have been highly popular over the iterations that we have had, is now live. For example, I can give you a view on the Fast Prep and Guided Prep content folder, which you will be able to access once you access the content, is currently live, and many students and many learners are utilizing the content. So I welcome all of you. If you're especially if you're a direct entrant and self-study entrant with limited time, and you're considering a small but highly value for money investment, then this would be one product or one set of products that I welcome you to consider. So you're most welcome to check my website, and you can access the content through that. On that note, with that reminder, I'd like to get back to the main discussion of this video, the SWOT analysis. So this falls under my critical or my main strategic analysis exercise that I do every iteration with the main CIMA SCS with AZB coaching program. Let's get started. We have a very interesting company this time, no doubt. And as a gamer myself, back in the day, I'm having a lot of fun talking about gaming, learning more about gaming, you know, especially given the exposure I haven't had over the past few years. So let's start by analyzing the strengths and weaknesses, and then let's look at the threats and the opportunities. As you know, the strengths and weaknesses are internal elements. So predominantly, you will see that these factors are from the Pre-see. These don't venture too far out to the industry or the macro environment surrounding Pixlwizz. They are more very specific to the Pre-see, very specific to the information that has been provided to us. All right, let's start with the SWOT. Looking at the strengths, Pixlwizz is a company. Now, I want to remind you that you're the senior finance manager of this company. So I'm going to talk in terms of your company, because it's ultimately the company that you're working for, whether you get a salary or not. So your company is one that has 35 years worth of experience and maturity, and it's a highly profitable business, which is a major strength. It has a volatile, when you look at the share price of the company, it has a volatile yet continuously rising MPS. You see an exponential growth with the share price of Pixlwizz, which is a major strength for the company, which indicates that there is a potential for high risk, high return. Even though the beta is less than 1, the potential for high risk and high return is undeniable, and which is something that you can touch on whenever the situation arises as far as the exam is concerned. It is a large quoted company in a well-regulated stock exchange, and that comes with certain benefits. You will notice in the opportunities section, being a large company, being a listed company, being someone associated to a well-regulated stock exchange, they have their own benefits. The company has very strong good governance hints. such as board balance, experienced membership across both the executive and the non-executive side, reasonable separation of roles. We see, especially a very common and obvious one, we see a separation of the chairman and the CEO's role. It is one of the largest game developers based in Westland, and it is also established in terms of reputation as one of world's leading game developers. So that is a brand, that is a label you carry with yourself. You work for one of the world's leading game developers like Activision, Blizzard, or Ubisoft Entertainment, these kind of companies that are really huge in the modern world. Physical presence is in 4 countries, all of which have strong gaming markets. And we have international presence because predominantly there's an online platform that we utilize, especially attached to the cloud technology we have. And it is also facilitated by multilingual accessibility for all games developed, which means that the moment you install a game, you might have experience even when you download softwares and you try to install them, you have the first thing that you get to select is language, because language is the way in. Language is how people access content, and therefore we have a heavily international presence catering to multiple countries, multiple regions, multiple languages. Internet-based model allows unlimited downloads. Now, this is a major strength with any business that has an internet presence, because if you have a physical location, retailing or any kind of manufacturing physical attribute to your business, it is limited by the amount of resources and the amount of volume that you can mainly produce and sell. But we don't really see that kind of limiting factor when it comes to internet-based businesses, because anyone and everyone can access. Consider Facebook for an example. There is no limitation to the number of Facebook accounts that can be created, which can even surpass the number of people existing on Earth. We have many successful game franchises and games in different genres. For example, we have in Jacob Plunge, a franchise which is an action franchise. We have Cratchy Swan, which is a MMO, massive multiplayer online game with 300 million registered players. This is a huge number, and probably one number that allows us to call ourselves one of the world's leading game developers. And if you look at the gameplay anytime, we have 800,000 real-time active users. At any given time, 800,000 people are logged in to play Cratchy Swan. That's incredible in terms of exposure. Keppel Quest is a new MMO that we have released, which has seen a huge reception, positive reception that we see in the contextual element of the pre-scene through a game review. We also own some of the world's leading games for all major hardware types, PC, consoles, smartphones, tablets, all these different hardware types, AR, VR technology, etc. So we have some of the world's leading games and also game genres. We have an extensive commitment on research and development activities. Even when you look at the principal risk register, they say that we have multiple games in the pipeline. So we capitalize on the existing franchise, but we have multiple games in the pipeline that comes from R&D activity. We have a large employee base of 5,100 people. This is a huge company if it employs 5,100 people spread across 4 countries with a highly creative team. And why I add the highly creative team piece is because we have had a successful track record looking at the financial and the non-financial performance. Because if a gaming company is not creative, it means you're going to have problems. You're going to have trouble as far as your track record is concerned. We see numerous examples of gaming companies that have fallen because ultimately their games is what happens with a gamer is that you play a game for 50 hours, 100 hours, 150 hours, and then you're going to get bored of it. And you might even play the storyline and you complete the game. So once that is done, the enthusiasm is lost. So you're looking for the next iteration. So unless we as a game developer provide a creative update to the game, which you see with Ubisoft's gaming franchise called Assassin's Creed. So Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, Assassin's Creed, various kind of iterations in terms of Vikings, etc. So those Updates are very creative and very different, even in terms of gameplay experience, the tools that you get to use, the weaponry, the fighting style, the costumes, the world that you're exploring. Those are very different and very unique. So unless you have a very creative team, you're going to have trouble updating games. We don't seem to have that problem, which makes it a strength for us. Multiple revenue streams in terms of console games, pay-to-play games, cloud gaming website, and physical media sales. So there is a section on the pre-scene which I've looked at even in the pre-scene analysis of the company, where we generate multiple revenue streams or multiple revenue channels. We have a strong global sales strategy which is centralized, and that is attached to a global marketing strategy with ability to develop coherent marketing strategies with regional operations for implementation and adaptation. And also we can, the way we operate is that, especially from a digital perspective, we have an active reassessment behavior when it comes to digital strategy. And as you know, if you have learned your E3 segment on digital strategy, you know that digital strategy is something very dynamic. It is data driven, it is very dynamic, it has its own real-time nature to it, it can change abruptly, and we as a business have to be able to respond to those changes according to, or as and when those changes happen. And you cannot do this if you don't have an active engagement with your assessment of digital strategy. And we don't seem to have that problem. It is a major strength for us. It is something that you can bring up even when it comes to cyber risk management. This will be a key element of focus that you can use to back your argument if you're talking about the fact that Pixlwizz is doing great. Ability to host panel discussions and focus groups to assess gamer sentiment at a regional level. And we have strong vision, mission, and value leading to strong organizational ethos. Our vision is to be the world's best game developer, etc. So when you look at the spread of the vision and the mission and how the value structure of the organization, we seem to have a very strong culture and ethos. The divisional organizational structure that we have in terms of the head office in Westland, and then we have 3 regional offices spread across 3 countries, focusing on various aspects of game development. That is very clearly a huge strength in terms of facilitating of regional operations and facilitating the coherent approach of how we develop and release games. All admin, so related to that, all of the admin and global marketing and core game development activities, which are predominantly PC based, is concentrated at head office at Westland, home country. Now, this has its own strength because when you look at game development, and if you looked at some of the game development software, most of that work at the initial stages is happening through PCs, computers, iMacs, PCs, Intel processors, whatever they may be. So even when you look at game development, you see most of the initial versions being developed for PC. Only after that, you have the iterations being developed for console, for smartphone, tablets, etc. So that PC game development, and also the idea that the game development side, you develop the game not on a console, you develop the game on a PC. So there is that sort of linked nature to the development in the PC and playing in the PC. So having our head office specializing on PC based game development is a major strength, and that is directly attached to marketing, directly attached to all the admin functions, all the sales functions. So there is going to be this organizational coherence in terms of how we approach development and sales of games. We have a very experienced senior management who are highly experienced in terms of, even when we look at the chairman and the strong board of directors as well of the company, which has excellent track record. Our CEO is our own, who is highly familiar with nearly 25 years in the company. I think Miss Ilana Sharma. Heavy investments of both time and money to maintain game popularity and the exciting nature of games, by updating the marketing, the sales, all of that is being given a lot of importance. Many games are in the pipeline, ready to launch, which shows or which speaks to the strength of the R&D function of our company. We have strong connections with third-party hardware manufacturers to ensure software-hardware compatibility, which is one of the most critical success factors for business, which we have identified elsewhere, is that if our games are not compatible, this is something that a good example I can quote is when Cyberpunk 2077 last year was released. It was very compatible with PS5, the latest console of PlayStation, but it had numerous bugs and a lot of trouble being played on earlier iterations, PS4, PS3, etc. It was not compatible at all at PS3 level. So at the time, PS5 transition had been made only by a relatively lower segment of gamers, even though PlayStation is the world's most popular console. PS4 was the one that was actively having a heavy exposure in the market, and gamers were excited to play. They tried to play, it was buggy, and there were a lot of trouble, which I think now they have fixed for the most part, but still there seem to be some issues with software hardware compatibility. So that is one example. And game sales through manufacturer websites, even for that we need strong connection. Even if you log into Sony's PS4, Amazon's Luna, or if you log into Xbox, Microsoft's Xbox or xCloud platform, you will notice there are games from all kinds of developers. So we are one of those developers who feature our games in their websites. So even for that, we need a good relationship with them, and we seem to have them. Along with all of this, security, cyber security, digital security is a key concern. With a strong networking, with a strong relationship with them, we will have no trouble addressing. Our reputation as a leading games developer, which I touched earlier, heavy focus to retain critical staff through multiple ways. This is predominantly seen in the Pre-see risk register, where we pay above industry salaries and benefits for key employees. We provide extensive training to junior employees, junior creators, etc., just to make sure that if someone leaves, we have someone ready to take up their place without any disruption to the entire value chain of game publishing, designing, and development. When it comes to peer comparison, we are a company with faster growth. That is undeniable. Even if you look at revenue growth year on year, we are almost growing twice faster than Branudeen. We have grown 6 times faster year on year when you look at non-current asset base. We seem to have better cost management as well, because the cost side is not growing as fast as the revenue. So cost management seems to be a key strength. When you look at the operating margin, this becomes visible. And when you look at gearing, our company's gearing is very, very low. In fact, we have been able to further lower it compared to Branudeen from 2019 to 2020. And coupled with high interest cover, this gives a high potential for debt injection. So we are very nicely placed if suddenly the need arises to inject debt capital into our business. This is something that we can easily do given the current capital position we are at. And we have a huge cash retention as well, something positive. Even when you look at the retained earnings, that's a very positive, very strong number. And our new MMO game, which was Keppel Quest, has had highly positive reviews, both on graphics and gameplay, which speaks to our existing and current track record. We seem to, even with the newest game we've released, we have positive reviews, players are ready to play it, which speaks to the massive strength we have. So that is a closer look at all the strength elements as far as Pixlwizz is concerned. Now let's take a look at the weaknesses. So when it comes to weaknesses, the first, well, you can call it a threat interchangeably, but one of the weaknesses we have is that we are operating in a market where, as far as the information we have been given, we know that there's a bigger competitor in Branudeen. Not just a competitor, but a bigger competitor. They are bigger than us in terms of their asset base. They are bigger than us in terms of their total revenue. Even though I identified that we are growing faster than them in the revenue in some of the year-on-year growth, they are bigger than us, and that might be one reason why they are slower, because if we are in a growth stage and if they are at a maturity stage, obviously they're going to grow, but not as fast as a company that is trying to catch up. We seem to be heavily dependent on the availability of internet for many of the revenue streams. In fact, only there seem to be only a smaller portion that we seem to be making in terms of physical media, DVD, Blu-rays, consoles, etc., like cartridges, etc. So if there's any problem with the internet, we are going to face trouble. Heavy dependency on limitations of hardware used by gamers. So if gamers don't update, the earlier example I told you with Cyberpunk 2077, when gamers didn't upgrade their console from PS4 to PS5, and if we had been the company who released Cyberpunk, we would have gone through a lot of negative memes and negative remarks and negative reputational damage as far as what happens and what gamers are experiencing. I mean, they'll just go to Reddit and Facebook and they'll just, annihilate the game and annihilate the reputation. It's that extent. Gamers are pretty opinionated and very hardcore people, dependency on cloud host and other service providers. So just the fact that we are an internet-based company also speaks to the fact that we are dependent on cloud hosts like Cloudbo in our case. We have weak demand for physical media in many developed markets. So we might not be looking at a very long-term prospect in terms of manufacturing and selling physical media related to gaming. Only it seems to be the case where only in certain developing and underdeveloped markets where still legacy modes of gameplay are being used. I mean, there are countries where Game Boys are still being used. So in such a situation, physical media may play a small role. Furthermore, if you look at the revenue, we seem to have Pareto behavior, the 80-20 rule, because we have two pieces of information that very nicely brings this out. The first is that Jacob Plunge, which seems to be our main franchise, contributes to 20% of our revenue. And the second is that there are 6 franchises contributing to 82% of revenue. Now, it's a matter of perception, because there are many gaming companies in the world, if you look at their numbers closely, that have this kind of behavior. They have so many games, but they have a few franchises that are doing really well, like Call of Duty by Activision Blizzard, Dota, PUBG, etc. They just have some games, World of Warcraft, so some games, a few games that are coming from 1 or 2 companies which make up the most of the revenue. So we seem to have that behavior with Jacob Plunge, and 6 franchises are contributing to 82% of revenue. So that Pareto behavior, yes, you can isolate it and say that these franchises are very, very strong, but it also adds a little bit of dependency weakness of our business as far as our attachment to those franchises are concerned, which means that even in terms of considering competition, if the competitors are able to really push through a game that can replace one of our successful franchises, then we are going to lose a lot of money very fast. That is the main threat that we have. Our chairman is sitting in the audit committee, so it's not necessarily something that is entirely, being negated as no, this is not possible. But is it advisable? That is a query that you must have in your mind. And the need to continuously introduce versions of games. So the thing about gaming is that if you just let it go, if you become complacent, if you just, sit on one franchise that is doing really well and you don't update it, you don't upgrade it, you don't build a newer version, then gamers are quickly going to leave you and leave your game, which is why that we need to continuously introduce newer versions. So that in itself, the fact that we have to be actively engaged in the creative process can be a challenging task. And ultimately, even though it is not, when you look at it as it is not a weakness, it might lead to a weakness down the line. Especially, for example, if we lose critical staff, some of the best creative minds If we lose them, we might have trouble. Government and other regulatory bodies, rating agencies reliant, especially for approval. So, you know, the ESRB has their own version, different countries have their own versions of rating games. So if we develop a game assuming that it was playable 13 plus, but then the country, the national policy on gaming doesn't allow it and says, no, this is 21 plus, the blood and the go is too extreme for young players, then what will happen is that a huge segment that we were hoping to sell the game for will be lost. So that is not a risk that we want to take, and it is definitely something that we want to keep in mind. Our good example would be how legislation recently in China has limited or restricted the gameplay time per day for certain age categories, especially the younger crowd, for up to 2 hours or 3 hours a day. So this has a huge impact on the esports industry in general. We have a volatile MPS, and the volatility is what I'm focusing here under the weakness, which has had some rough spots in the past 5 years. So even when you look at the share price movement, you realize that there have been some troughs, some drops. And even though we have been able to recover ourselves, you know, it was just something that was unexpected. The fact that you're continuously seeing that is a point I deemed worthy of note. Internally, highly IT systems dependent and technology centric. This creates the need to evolve and upgrade itself continuously, thus requiring high levels of technical and technological expertise and tech savviness. So this is something that we don't really have to even, you know, this is something so obvious. We are an internet company, we are a tech company, we are heavily dependent on systems, software and hardware. So that in itself, and creative and capable staff who are able to handle that software, handle that hardware. So we are heavily dependent on that kind of technology centric resources, both in terms of people and machinery. We are heavily exposed to, or rather, now we don't really have a very strong view on that as far as the pre-scene is concerned, but don't forget, we operate in 4 countries and we seem to be selling physical media in much of the developing nations. So if these things are anything to consider, they clearly indicate that we are operating on multiple currency basis, even though it may be a relatively lower portion, because when you think about the cloud gaming sector, wherever you are in the world, if you log into our cloud, you might be paying in maybe $. So that is a home currency, invoicing in the home currency strategy. But there may be an element that goes beyond where transactions are happening because of our exposure to an international physical presence that involves currency risks. Cybersecurity capabilities are limited to known cyber threat assessment. So this is a major weakness for any tech company, because we might have very stringent cybersecurity policies and cybersecurity measures in place. You know, we might be doing various activities like penetration testing, etc., regularly, but these the response level, the way we have designed our cybersecurity system, might be limited to what we know as threats. And you never know with cyber what kind of new threat is just lurking about. So that is a point to be wary of. Bulk of game creation work depends on the retention of high caliber, highly creative and skilled employees. So if we lose these kind of high quality, high caliber people, even though we have risk mitigation steps in place for that, if we lose these kind of people, there might be the odd person here and there who are really, really unique, who have that really creative mind, like maybe Steve Jobs for Apple. And there were years and years, and even today, people say that Apple has, yes, been refining their products to be better in terms of performance, faster, etc. But really, that transformation Steve Jobs brought in terms of giving something completely unexpected, completely new, that made our life extremely easy suddenly, like the iPad, like the iPhone, has not happened with Apple. In fact, they're making more money with their software side, which is their fastest growing segment now, so it seems like Apple is capitalizing on making money now, which is Tim Cook's strategy always, than the creative side of things. So these are things just to relate to. And we mark the end of the weaknesses section. So that's the strengths and weaknesses. let's take a look at our opportunities and threats. So before I look at the opportunities, I'm going to take a look at the threats in the business. So if you look at the first point here, we seem to face severe competitive threats from Plantain and any other game developer, which means that this business, you have to understand from a macro perspective. If you have analyzed the macro industry, if you have done your research, just basic reading, you know that there are multiple global leading game developers. Just one game is enough. One strong franchise is enough for you to be a global hit overnight. Gamers will just flock to you. So we are facing severe competitive threat from any game development company. Cybersecurity threats like data theft, hacking, viruses, social engineering, hardware failure, backup failures, etc. Then we need to understand suppliers and third-party vendors may back out, which may lead to supply chain disruptions, especially new technology implementations and expansion disruptions. So our value chain, if you analyze a game development company's value chain, we are heavily dependent on so many other stakeholders, from hardware suppliers, system suppliers, software suppliers, publishers, marketing, content developers. We might be designing our own content, but the development and the publishing of it will have to be taken care of relevant experts, especially in the digital marketing side. We might not have the necessary expertise with digital marketing, cloud service, internet service providers. So we have this wide network of stakeholders that we depend on, which makes up the entire value chain of the business. So if any of those points are disrupted, we have trouble. Breaches of any ethical aspects and values is a major threat and something that you want to look out for in your variant. There'll be definitely in any variant, I don't guarantee it, but if you look at the 6 or 7 variants, there will be a few variants always which have a major breach of ethical aspect being addressed. Our gamers' needs and tastes evolve, and the rapidity of that change. So I was talking about how dynamic this industry is and how we need to continuously assess our digital strategy to be able to cater to the changes. And what drives this change, what in fact drives the change, when you look at it, one of the critical factors is gamer needs and tastes. The gamers' preferences, the gamers' way of approaching playing games, the gamers' acquisition of hardware, switching to consoles, etc. Some gamers, abruptly decide they're going to switch from PC to console. Some go back console to PC, etc. I myself, I have a heavy tendency and preference to PC. So these type of evolutions, these type of changes, we want to be wary of, because a sudden change that we didn't anticipate can be a trouble. So with related to this, we host panel discussions and we get feedback from gamers on a regional level. So that is one way we mitigate this threat. The ability of gamers to hack and cheat during gameplay. So the esports industry is massive and there's a lot of hacking and cheating that is going on. Just check out some of the news items. There are top players in the world who have been banned from playing games, some for life, some for 5 years, because they were caught cheating in a mainstream tournament or event. Sometimes, the game developing company themselves have trouble figuring out how that player, because there used to be this incident where I watched a gamer cannot die. He's playing, so there are certain things like falling from a cliff that results in the gamer dying. But there was an incident where this gamer was playing and there were some things that were happening and the gamer wasn't really dying in gameplay. And then, the game development company, I think it happened with Halo, they had to come up and they had to check, and they realized that there was a code that had been entered into the game that prevented the gamer from dying, which we usually call cheat codes, that had been hacked into and entered. Offline gameplay is a major element. If I explain this, just think of this in terms of physical media. When you buy physical media and you go home, you don't have internet connection, you bought the DVD of Call of Duty, you just put the DVD in, inserted the DVD, and install the game, and you're playing the game. Now this gameplay, this connection has nothing or no connection with the internet, no connection with the game development company. So if Jacob Plunge is being played offline, we have no visibility of what is going on there. There might even be tournaments planned on an offline basis where a lot of things are going on. So we don't have a lack of, or we don't have control with respect to offline gameplay. Gaming piracy, just like the piracy movement in the entertainment and the mainstream movie industry, gaming also has a huge pirated segment where a lot of games are being ripped off and shared freely, etc. You know, games averagely they cost between $20, $19.99 to $69.99 at the most expensive level when you look at games like God of War, latest versions of FIFA, etc. So these games can be downloaded in various sites from the internet for absolutely free with playable versions, you know, with playable hacks done to them, which we generally call cracks. Game development and gameplay related regulation and supervision initiatives by governments and authorities. I mentioned a weakness earlier that we are dependent. And if they actually take measures to deploy certain regulations that are harmful to us, that may cause a problem in the exposure and the market potential that we engage with. There may be maintenance failures or shortcomings leading to concerns in system infrastructural integrity. So this is a general IT related or hardware dependent company weakness or threat where if we fail to maintain, if we fail to take care of our systems, update our grids, the network infrastructure, etc., we might have trouble in continuing our business without any disruptions. Threats to reputation, hostile takeovers, just a few general risks, regulatory and legal risks, depending on various incidents, cash flow risk. Like for example, with respect to incidents, I must say a game addiction is a severe problem in the world, especially in the United States and countries like China. So there are legal cases that are, you know, ongoing against gaming companies. You know, mobile games like Free Fire and PUBG have had severe problems, especially during the pandemic, where a lot of people who were stuck at home, who were just looking to do something, engaged with the game, and then they just hooked on to it and are finding it very difficult to give up. Which is why you should, you know, I always say stay away from the smartphone. Just use it for the good, and beyond that, just let it be. Just a reminder on that. All right, cash flow risk, manufacturers defaulting on collected revenue, because we know we have third-party revenue streams where we don't directly collect the money. So if any of our manufacturers, any of our third-party partners who feature our games on their cloud gaming websites, etc., default on their payments, default on disseminating the collected revenue to us, we will have trouble from the income statement, from the financial side. There may be a decline in creative output and capacity within the company. So this might not necessarily be that people are leaving, but that the people who are in the company are unable to come up with new things, which I particularly notice with companies like Apple and a lot of smartphone manufacturers, because if you look at their upgrades, most of the upgrades are happening based on what is currently existing, and you rarely see completely fully innovative products. And that may be the same case with us. Unpredictable behaviors of shareholders and market changes may happen. Any reputational risk and public relations concern can be a severe threat to our business. If our executives behave questionably in terms of bribery, insider trading, fraudulent behavior, etc., this can have major implications to our company. If we lose critical staff, heavily reliant on skilled game development, IT, cybersecurity staff, etc., you know this to be the case with our business. As long as the critical staff are with us, we are good. We lose people, our business is going to face pressures on many aspects. Our potential exposure to currency risk and weak treasury function. So even if our exposure, which may be something general, which may fall under economic and business risk, every company might be facing, like what happens when oil prices generally go up, and a lot of countries commonly face the same issue. But if our treasury function is weak, that might lead to repercussions from a threat perspective. So that is why we identified it as a weakness, so that we can really understand the broad threat around it and take measures to capitalize and address that. Lack of mirrors or hot backups of data. And finally, any incident globally. This is one of, even though it is the last, it is by no way the least threat. It is one of the most severe threats we face. It really depends on the bulk of the proportion of the online gameplay that is happening. So it seems like a majority of our gameplay is happening pay to play, free to play, cloud gaming, etc. So if a bulk of that gaming is happening, let's say 80% of our gaming is happening in the internet, and globally any incident, and this can be from the gamer's perspective, because if you're a gamer, you're sitting at home, your ISP fails you, suddenly you lose connectivity. So that might mean that only you, your area, your town, your city, your country's grid is down. So now there's a blackout only in your area. So that's when ISP disruptions happen from the gamer's end. But there could be disruptions that happen from the game development company and the server's end, which is something that is seen in the CloudBow incident, where the freak accident, where the ship anchored and they anchored on the network cable of CloudBow server sites that connect the system, the cloud website of Pixlwizz to the global internet connectivity or the network. And what happened was that because it was from our side, the entire network was down. And maybe those of them who were currently downloading games suddenly stopped, the game download stopped. On the other side, those of them who were playing the game, they might have played, but gameplay would have disrupted. Those of them who saved the game, we call saved data, might have been lost. So many things can go wrong if a global incident or any incident in anywhere in the world disrupts internet connectivity, which can be a major threat. And that is a closer look at all the threats, even in terms of an extension of the weaknesses that we face, that Pixlwizz faces. Finally, in this SWOT analysis discussion, now I'm going to look at the opportunities. Let's take a look at it. The first opportunity is clearly the first kind of line that you see in the pre-see. Westland, we are based and we originated from a well-developed large country with a huge gaming market. So this in itself is a major opportunity for us. All the 4 markets in which Pixlwizz is present indicates further potential to grow. So that is an undeniable opportunity, and we seem to have capitalized hugely on that, and we might have more potential to capitalize further from those markets. The third is we seem to be having multiple revenue channels, an omni-channel strategy, so to speak, and further opportunities to expand revenue through digital methods. And our industry itself, based on the pre-see numbers, and this is not actual industry numbers, but based on the pre-see numbers, it's a booming industry. The fact that we are in an industry that is booming itself is a huge opportunity. The industry is valued currently at about 170, 180 billion dollars, with around 3 billion, nearly 3 billion potential target consumer base spread across all ages. So this is unprecedented. Our games could be played by anyone in any country, belonging to any age, any race, any nationality, any tribe. This is huge. There are very few things in the world that can be accessed like this, which is why probably when you look at the actual numbers, which is why the gaming industry is bigger than movie, music, and the entertainment industry put together. The opportunity to create games for different hardware and different genres. So the fact that there's more variety to be applied, we can always come up with a new game for a new console, for a new technology, AR, VR, new genre, board games, platform games, action games, running games, etc. Sports games, strategy games, arcade games, just huge number of genres and hardware modes are available for us to release and develop games on. We have the opportunity to capitalize on a single game by releasing different versions instead of having to continuously release new games. So that in itself is an opportunity, because having to come up with entirely new concepts can be a daunting task. So instead of that, if you can channel positive energy, good viable energy, to updating an existing game like what we've been doing with Jacob Plunge, where the newer versions are very different, very unique, but also from the same game. So we have the game engine ready. We just have to update it to give a different experience, and gamers seem to embrace it very easily. And this is the thing about gamers, gamers are very habitual. So if you are hooked on to something like, for example, I was hooked on to a game called Assassin's Creed from Ubisoft Entertainment. And I remember when I'm just waiting, once I finish that iteration, I'm just waiting for the new game because I know it's going to be different, but I'm familiar with it. So because of the habitual creature inside human beings, we tend to embrace newer versions of new games than switching. It takes real effort to get a hardcore gamer. Like if you meet a gamer who is playing an action, army game like Call of Duty or Dota or something like that, and you ask them to switch, they'll have trouble. They'll say no. So it has to be someone they trust and they respect in terms of the gaming world, coming and telling them, look, I played this game and it's really good, you gotta check it out. So then they'll listen to it. Other than that, it's very difficult with these gamers to convince them to switch. Advancements of hardware enabling further innovation and expansion in gaming experience is a major element, with Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation, all these, different companies who release gaming hardware, even in terms of laptops, Dell, HP, Asus, they have their own gaming laptops, gaming processors and chips, and Nvidia's graphics cards, AMD's Radeon graphics technology chain. So all of these have newer iterations coming up all the time. Even gaming laptops are a huge deal, where gamers are waiting to buy the newer laptops very fast. It is a niche segment. It is not a huge segment, especially gaming laptops, but it is a very, very premium segment. So the margins are huge that justify making a few in terms of the volume. Cloud-based gaming, taking away the dependency on storage requirement, leading to more lean and agile login and play experience for gamers. So this was a major upgrade to how games were played, because back then gamers had to have CPUs with hardware that could enable storage, because they have to download the game or install the game, and some games take up a lot of space. But now you don't need space, and especially with with certain machines like MacBooks and iMacs, etc., what happens is that the hardware, because it's coming in latest technology called SSD, these technologies are very, very expensive. This is why one reason why you see these newer MacBooks are very expensive, because the chips, the hardware that is being used in those are extremely rare and extremely expensive. So even though the takeaway justifies the cost, is you get massive benefits in terms of processing speed, but even if you look at storage, because we do a lot of other work and we need a lot of storage, even though we may be a gamer, we might not prefer to install a game there. We might have other important files to be stored. So then cloud gaming is the perfect alternative, where servers are located elsewhere. We don't really have to worry. We just need an internet connection and money to pay. Simple. Growth in adoption of and capabilities of cloud technologies, online streaming capabilities, data transmission and networking technology, etc., is a major aspect that creates a number of newer opportunities in gaming. One good example and obvious one is cloud. Another nice example is online streaming here that you see, because if you look at some of the biggest YouTube channels, these belong to game streamers like PewDiePie, and there are various names these gamers come up with, their pseudonames. So it is important that we understand that. Then data transmission and networking technology, etc., even opens up further. One good example I can give you is 5G infrastructure and IoT tendencies, Internet of Things tendencies, where you'll have gamers playing games on their smart televisions, car screens down the line. Significant number of collaborative opportunities exist among multiple groups. I talked about it in terms of strengths also, because we and also weaknesses, because we depend on them. There's a heavy dependency. The value chain is made up of so many different stakeholders, but also it gives a lot of opportunities. When you have these kind of connections and this kind of connectivity and relationships, it brings up a lot of opportunities where you never know. Tomorrow someone might reach out to you and say, look, can we look at this? There's an option. Limitless international expansion capability and opportunity due to internet-based business model with little need for physical presence, especially in a pandemic-ridden environment. So this was very well seen during the COVID-19 pandemic. Not that it's a major factor you need to use for your pre-see or for your exam, but it was really well noted, because what happened was that when people had nothing to do and were unable to step out, the internet was the solution. And the internet perfectly was positioned to open up gaming. Gaming boomed at a different level than movies or whatever, because movies are very monotonous and you have this one-sided nature to it, where you're just sitting and watching it and then it just plays. But gaming is not like that. It's a creative art, and when you play a game, the experience is entirely different. So when you have the internet model, this gives you limitless capability. As far as, not limitless would be a little bit strong, but beyond what you would generally imagine possible, capability to expand. Even in terms of downloads, there is no limitations, right? Any number of gamers in the world can download. If you have 7 billion gamers in the world, all 7 billion, if they have space, they can download a game and play the game. As long as our servers have the capacity, it is not an issue at all. Tendency for digital education and technology among young groups, expanding potential market size further. So this is a new, and also not very new, but a good tendency, rather a positive tendency, because gaming used to be just the gaming side of things, but now there's a education stream that is being developed alongside how the industry is booming, where a lot of major universities are introducing game development, gameplay, game related, various sciences related courses and degree programs. So don't be surprised if down the line, your child, or even if you want to do a gaming related degree, it is not unheard of, and it is definitely something viable. So when your kid comes and tells you, dad, mom, I want to do a gaming degree, just don't go berserk and don't go on a rant about how gaming is not a very positive thing, where you just, are gonna sit and do this play all day. It's a huge business, far bigger than most businesses, most industries in the world, and therefore might be a little interesting to see where that might take one to in life. Opportunity to monetize currently unmonetized, untapped elements within games. So the thing about games is that you play a game and there are so many elements that are free. So you might be able to monetize those. Like what Facebook has done with certain cases where previously they were free and now they've monetized it because of the demand. So that's one option. And also you could always introduce new elements that either increases the skill level of gamers, gives new tools, opens up new pathways, etc. For money. Expanding and further strengthening the partnerships with hardware manufacturers, especially those of them who provide gaming hardware for gameplay. We may capitalize on certain high potential and growing game genres and games as and when they become popular. Let's say, for example, there's a huge boom in RTS, real-time strategy, suddenly, and we had our RTS platforms or games not doing really well. But someone else released a game and they're playing, but it's a 40-hour gameplay, so that the moment gamers finish it, they're going to get bored. But you look at your pipeline and there's a perfect game that really fits that kind of taste. So what you do is you don't keep it in the pipeline, you take it out, you release it, you market it, and you position it in a way that those gamers who are now attached to that existing RTS game, the moment they finish it, they're looking for something similar taste, the ad is placed, they download it, they play, they get hooked onto it. So that kind of opportunity can be very carefully strategized and positioned. The expansion of internet availability worldwide is a huge opportunity, increasing the number of potential gamers worldwide. Even though you have never played a game ever in the world, you are a potential gamer for gaming companies. Given the right situation, right circumstance, you will consider playing a game. Capital markets and large deposits. I mentioned that we are in a well-regulated stock exchange, so that gives us strong access to capital, leading to capital utilization opportunities. We have mergers and acquisition opportunities, as long as they're not hostile. Branding opportunities to be environmentally conscious with carbon neutral aspirations and alternate renewable energy adoption. High levels of retained earnings and cash richness with opportunities to invest. New technology implementation opportunities like big data harnessing, AI, and machine learning in gaming. We have innovative marketing opportunities, which we have already been utilizing, but our central global marketing team, head office attached to the head office in Westland, they always have the opportunity to come up with new innovative marketing. And in the gaming value chain, once you develop a game, the marketing, the game merchandise, and the game marketing content design is a huge aspect. You might have the best game in the world, but if you don't market it right, you're going to have trouble being able to push it. Outsourcing opportunities, which may be non-critical or specialty functions, in which case you might be able to consider outsourcing them, or you might even be able to provide selective outsourced services. So not only that we outsource our functions, also that we provide outsourced services to others, if at all the circumstance is right. Predominantly, we are not outsourcing company, and I don't think it would be too far-fetched, but who knows, because there might be opportunities to offer consultancy services where we sell our expertise. Furthermore, there is always opportunity to standardize ourselves, be more reputed, like getting ISO certifications for game development and internal organizational environment, especially for example, these days something very prominent is the Great Place to Work brand, where they've released their company list, and a lot of people are featuring it. So that kind of recognition opportunities are available. We can commit ourselves to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and therefore all the reputational benefits and the networking benefits it brings us. Opportunities to attend and win global game developer awards. So there are international organizations of which we can be part of, like the IASB, etc. So if they host various award functions and ceremonies, and they provide recognitions for game development companies, we can try to target them. The opportunity to be part of global gaming organizations and even organize esports events. So this is one big strategy a lot of companies are utilizing, where they have these massive tournaments, and these are massive. By no means, I'm not exaggerating. These are huge tournaments where thousands and thousands of people just come and play games for tournaments, and the prices are enormous, to the point you're really surprised. Can one earn this much money by just playing games, by just pressing 5 buttons on a console? It's I wouldn't use crazy, but I don't have any other word. It's really crazy when you think about it. Global pandemics and similar events that confines people to homes. So this is something that we really saw, because if you look at the industries that did really well, gaming and esports was one of the biggest industries that hugely benefited. They made strides that they had never ever made before because of the pandemic, because people were confined to their homes. They were looking for a time pass activity, and they found gaming to be the perfect opportunity. You order a PlayStation or an Xbox online, you get it down home, or you put together a PC and you start playing. Once you get hooked onto it, you start just buying different games. You finish one, there's another. It is an endless stream of opportunities to capitalize on. And finally, the hyper-personalization trend that nowadays we see, especially what I mean by hyper-personalization is that this is actually offered by certain games like Assassin's Creed. Ubisoft has their own hyper-personalization options where you as a gamer, you have unprecedented level of control as to how your character looks, feels, behaves, acts, says, fights, etc. Where they hand over some of the developer capabilities now to the gamer, where the gamer can take control and do certain things that hyper personalizes their character, their gameplay. So this is a massive opportunity that is being hugely, like there are certain games where you can do your own dance move and emulate it to your gaming avatar, the character that is in the virtual world, and then it will just copy you. So it's a hyper personalization and it does exactly what you do. It is to that extent personalization is being offered in gaming, and it's huge, and it's the reception of it, how it's been accepted, is also massive. So as you know, personalization is a major factor, especially in the digital space, and that marks the end of the SWOT analysis of the Pixlwizz business. So I really hope that you were able to extract or learn much from this, and that you've been able to develop a high level of familiarity. This is part of my strategic analysis that I do for Pixlwizz, or rather for any pre-scene relevant, which even you can access through my fast prep, guided prep solutions, which I said, which you can go to the website and check. On that note, I would like to mark, but I said that there's a small surprise, and that surprise is that you can download this SWOT analysis as the PDF file. You can just download it, get it printed, use it, etc., using the link in the below description, which might give you further accessibility. You might be able to make your own notes on the SWOT, and just make additions, changes, improve. Because when you really think about it, the SWOT is one of the most useful tools, and it gives you a completely almost complete view on how the industry and the business works. So that is it. You can just check the links below, and one of those will be for the free writing coaching session, one of those will be for the website, and one of those will be where you can download the SWOT analysis and use it for your own. So I really hope that that will also help you in your journey. Thank you very much for being part of the content, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a pleasure to engage with you, and the reception has been wonderful, and I'm quite thankful. On that note, I would like to wrap this session, or wrap this video up. All the very best to you. May peace be upon all of you, my fellow learners, professionals, and ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.